watch it all. Oh, hold on. Okay, here we go. We'll call this character Shark Boss. Shark Boss just came out of the board meeting and said, wow, we need, and T-posing for maximum, observation of their superiority over you. We need a tabletop session. You are our information security specialist. You have always helped us out in a crisis. You should run a tabletop for us. And of course, we come back with, heck no, I'm a technologist. Or what do you mean you want me to run a tabletop? Who's going to be there? You mean the board wants to come or the CFO wants to come? So what do we do with that? What do we do with that? This is something that as a consultant, I'm getting requests on all the time, or I'm getting people coming to me personally saying, hey, Adam, I just got this request from my boss that we need to start doing tabletops. What do I do? And the challenge we have in a lot of cases is, as you can see, the classic ball and socket handshake. One goes for the fist bump and one goes for the high five, and it's awful. We finally get a tabletop scenario together. Oh, I know, let's do ransomware from a phishing email that just locks up all of our stuff. And then we don't even know what our incident response plan is. Our incident response team, our IT team, our InfoSec team looks silly in front of the executives now, and nothing good comes of that. So I recognize this problem, and I thought, okay, maybe this is an opportunity if I'm not going to tick off people about talking about the hiring problem. How about we talk about how to engage our audience inside our organizations a little better, right? We're finally getting recognized. We're finally getting the opportunity to come to the table. We have to make sure we don't blow it. This is our opportunity to be heroes, to be business enablers as information security professionals. So one of the things I wanted to do first as well is kind of identify the problem, asking the question, what's the problem we're trying to solve here? What is the reason for the tabletop? To appease the board isn't good enough. To appease the executives, to get our PCI compliance isn't good enough. We have to have a problem to solve. And even if we do decide, yes, we want to roll the dice and do the Dungeons and Dragons style tabletop, are we ready? Do we have an incident response plan? Do we know what the contents are of? So if you go through your CISSP materials, because we all, live and eat and breathe by that book, don't we? I don't know, body of knowledge. Some of the alternatives that are available to you, things like knowledge checks. If you're doing your CISSP exam, this could be one of the questions is what alternatives or what kind of crisis simulations do you have? Knowledge checks. And I actually stole this directly from a slide deck that I did with a client where we had that problem exactly. Was we have an incident response plan. We're not necessarily convinced that the people who are going to be using it actually know the contents. So instead of just jumping straight into the big tabletop session with all the people involved, we started quizzing the incident response team. And, this is a pretty simple question that, just simple slide deck and simple animations. You start off with the green text. You click the mouse. The yellow text comes up. So what is? I guess I'll poll the audience. What? The instant handling processes from NIST 800-61R2, A, B, C, or D. I personally like C. The answer is, of course, in white underneath, right? Preparation, detection, analysis, containment, eradication, recovery, post-incident activities. C is shampoo. Regardless, we can start to, before we go in and make the dreaded ball and socket, we can arm ourselves with knowledge of the incident response plan. That's one of the big findings that comes out of tabletop sessions all the time. Did anybody do the pre-reading? No. Did anybody know that we have an incident response plan? Yes. Did anybody read it? No. This kind of forces the issue a little bit. Things like checklist tests can also be helpful. Again, different than a tabletop session, but this is something that you can use in your organization too. If you have an incident response plan, is to verify whether or not, go through your contact list. Holy crap, 25% of these people no longer work here. Well, maybe that checklist will identify for you gaps in your program. We talk about gap analysis a lot. This is something that helps you with your gap analysis. Structured walkthrough. Same sort of idea as a checklist test, but you take your instant response plan and you start running things through it. You take your scenarios of phishing email causes ransomware or something wrong with your payment gateway, and start running through your instant response plan, providing you have one. Find gaps and opportunities to make your instant response plan better. Or, as I found in some other tabletop sessions, where we start looking and diving into the organization to understand what we want to be testing, sometimes we discover issues with the protections in the organization. Oh, those are always lovely. An RKO out of nowhere. Doing our technical crisis simulation. There are platforms. If you have a SIM, if you have a SOC, that you can get those SOC operators. If you are a SOC operator, this stuff is fantastic because it takes you out of the mundane, everyday tickets that you are addressing, and you can add material into that SOC and that SIM that then allows the operators to do cool things, see cool things they're always looking for, but they never get to experience. Those technical crisis simulations are phenomenal in that realm because it makes their jobs interesting again. And you can do this as well. I talked to the dudes from CrowdStrike and tell us, thank you to our sponsors as well, not that they're listening, but they are a big part of BSides. Go ask them about this. I happen to be your customer. Is there something you can do to help me arm my staff with technical things that are cool and are gonna help me respond more effectively in a crisis? Interruption tests. This one is on your CISSP exam. I'm curious, has anyone here actually done a partial or full interruption test of any of your production systems? Oh, how did it go? Thumbs down. So in disaster recovery world and the business continuity world, this is something that is always recommended. I don't know that you will find any IT department that will really be willing to let you take down a web part to see how you respond. I know very few organizations that really have a non-production system that is a close enough representation of a production system. I'm seeing some nods around the room too. So this may or may not be all that effective for you, but it was in the book, so I thought I'd include it too. And by popular demand, with Joe Mangello hanging out with the kids doing Dungeons and Dragons, rolling the dice and actually going through the scenarios and letting people walk through the scenarios does have incredible value. It really does. I always just simply recommend first, make sure, the classic lawyer scenario, know what the answer to the question is going to be before you ask it. So now that we've gone through that, every session comes at a cost. Every tabletop session you offer comes at a cost, whether that's your planning time, whether that's the time in the session, in the tabletop session, and people are judging you. People are judging everyone all the time. You know, my teenage kids say that to me all the time. Don't judge, Dad. And what are they doing the whole time? They're judging. Planning time. I had an executive come to me, I guess this was probably 5 years ago, and said, Adam, it's time. We're doing tabletop sessions every quarter. Make it happen. And my response was, great. Can you give me a quarter FTE to make that happen? Because tabletop sessions do not come out of nowhere. And the real meat of the presentation is all about that. Proper prior planning prevents poor performance. If you don't plan out your sessions, whether that's your checklist tests, your structured walkthroughs, anything else, your tabletop sessions, if you don't plan them out right, they will fail. And that does not help you keep your seat at the big kids' table. Session time 2. If you get the executives into your room, do yourself a favor, and I guess stress yourself out. Do a calculation based on what you think their salary is. You take their salary, you divide it by 2,000, and that's about what each of those people in the room costs per hour. If you're doing a 4-hour tabletop session with 8 executives in that room, you can be sitting at $20,000, $30,000 an hour worth of other people's times. Make it count. And the judgment time too. You are judged for the quality of the session you're delivering. Your team members, if you are facilitating this for your team members are being judged by their ability to respond. The teams that come to the table with you, whether that's the corporate lawyer or whether that's the CFO, are judging each other about how well they can interact as a team too. So here we go, build a plan. And I'm just looking at my time. Oh, I'm good. I got lots of time. What I did for the sake of fun and debauchery, and I'm going to see if I can do this without breaking my computer or the big screen. Aren't those screens lovely? Oh, it worked. Hold on. Oh, I got to do this, but it's going to be tricky. So missioncritical.ca, it's my personal website. It's WordPress. Please don't hack me, because as I was, building this page on my own website last night, I found SSL problems. I'll fix them tonight, I promise. But just whenever I do something like this, I try to put a little bit of material that people can go and consume and read after the fact. What I did is I put together a blank tabletop plan. And it is not the one that I use in my professional practice to actually deliver tabletops, but it's awfully similar. It's the same thing that I was using when I was in emergency services, and we were leading people through like the town is on fire kind of disaster scenarios. It's the stuff that I've used inside of large municipalities to lead them through privacy breach scenarios, things like that. A blank tabletop report, we'll talk about that. And a couple of things here too underneath that. MITRE ATT&CK Navigator and MITRE groups. Okay, Scott Taylor talked about MITRE ATT&CK Framework. Jason Maynard talked about MITRE ATT&CK Framework. Adam McMath talking about MITRE ATT&CK Framework. Vivek, I think, is up next. I don't know where you are, Vivek. I bet he'll mention MITRE ATT&CK Framework. Yet when Jason asked the question about how many people are using it in their organization or their daily lives, there weren't a whole lot of hands going up. So I'll show you a couple things really quick and dirty and easy that may give you some other reasons to start using it in your organization and to start using it for things like crisis simulations that will help. And one of the things that I put up there as well, and I'm going to talk about that right now, and I'm just guessing because I'm looking at this very sideways. Attack IQ, and I'm not trying to astroturf, so I'm not beating up the rules of engagement for BSides. But if you're looking for some training on MITRE ATT&CK Framework, how to use the MITRE groups, how to use the MITRE ATT&CK Navigator, and there's a link to that in my little silly web page too. It's free education, it's free training, things like how to navigate the MITRE groups, how to use the MITRE ATT&CK Navigator. It's all free. You all need CPEs for all your certs anyways. Consider it. So Attack IQ, academy.attackiq is a really good way to look at some of that. But the first thing I wanted to take a look through, again, proper prior planning prevents poor performance. And this is all very basic, just text on page. You can grab the PDF yourself if you want it. If you don't, it's up to you. But a tabletop plan. So how do you plan out your tabletop session? And there's a set of things that we can do to help us really understand what we're going to deliver, how we're going to engage our audience. And it all starts with a purpose. And I gave some hints and stuff in there too. We want this to be specific and relevant to your audience. Using Thomas as an example, he works in the finance industry. I'm just going to go over here to the MITRE ATT&CK groups. Jason would have shown you some of this too. This is very simple. It's attack.mitre.org/groups. Or you go to mitre.org and you do groups, or you use Google and you say MITRE ATT&CK, and you don't have to use the ampersand if you don't want to, groups, and you'll get to this page. And right in here, Control F, Finance. This will tell you what MITRE-tracked groups are currently attacking or have in recent history looked at and attacked finance industry businesses. Education, healthcare, all of these things. You can use this resource for free to help you figure out who could be attacking your organization, which helps you determine that purpose. That purpose. What are we trying to do? It's not just some unknown attacker that is going to just send us a phishing link and, okay, maybe they will. Hopefully we have good EDR and all those things that are helping protect us from that. But to really understand the motivations of our attackers so that we can deliver that to our audience in a way that is meaningful and visceral. I'm going to go back to my plan. So the key to your purpose is a decision point. What is the real decision that I want from my audience by the end? At the end of it, what is it I'm looking for? Do I want to pay or not pay a ransom? Are we going to design a solution by which they can't get out of it without making a pay, not pay decision? I don't know. Switching to a different service provider. I've seen tabletop sessions set up specifically for this too, is to say that we have only one path of network connectivity into our data center, and we need to design a solution that says we need two minimum. So you can design your purpose around that. Fire Jim or Adam or whomever, right? There may be some, I just use that flippantly and silly. I like things like using the formula, audience behavior condition degree, that helps you make sure that your purpose is wide enough and broad enough, but also covers all the bases so that you know who your audience is, you know what you're trying to solve, and you know what the expected behavior is going to be, or, who, what, when, where, why, how, right? Some examples that I put on there, executives will walk through the business impacts of a successful ransomware attack that cannot be recovered from via backups during a 2-hour boardroom session. Okay, that's pretty broad. That's a classic executive one. You can, if your audience is not executives, though, the IT staff wouldn't care about that one. So what can we do with the IT staff? Let's find out. Let's go into the MITRE attack groups. What kind of things are happening in our industry? The IT team will be tested for their knowledge of the incident response plan using a competitive and fun trivia event. One of the things that I didn't put, or that I didn't talk about it on the slide about doing the tests, is using a Kahoot, right? Discover the demographic you're working with, and if they're collaborative, get them working together. If they are competitive, get them competing. That's always cool and fun too, right? The online store support team will be tested on their ability to discover, analyze, contain, eradicate, and recover from an advanced persistent threat injected into their payment gateway. That's something that could be very interesting to an IT team, but would have no value for executives. So your purpose becomes very important, because what that leads into is the next section, is the objectives. Specific, measurable, action-oriented, realistic, and time-bound. This is, another formula that I like to help me really identify and drill down what we're trying to deliver. And the key, so they are statements that support your purpose and become your inputs. Again, they start at this high level. We don't want a whole lot of detail at this point. All we want is objectives, the problems that we're going to try to solve, or the questions that we're expecting our audience to answer to create discussion. The IT team are presented with a packet capture that indicates industrial process control signals that have been sent from an unexpected host. They have 5 minutes to analyze the information, determine if an attacker is present. Develop collateral. You can develop collateral, so you can actually, and I've done this before too, it's really cool when you've got people of a very technical nature in a room and you hand them a piece of paper with packet capture on it, or you say, go to this URL, or go inside your SharePoint document, open this PCAP in Wireshark. Oh, you didn't bring your computer? Well, how about that? Which is where section 3 comes into play. The requirements. Let your audience know. Set up ahead of time. Do we need a boardroom? Do we need Zoom or Teams? Do we need snacks? I need snacks. I have a fast metabolism. I need to eat all the time. But lay out those technology requirements. Again, stick your pre-reads in there. I don't need everybody to bring the body of knowledge from ISC squared, but it would sure be lovely if they understood the pre-reads were the incident response plan. That way they can't come back at you and say, nobody told me. Right? So putting those together, safety requirements too, in a lot of organizations, we have to have stuff like muster zones or things like that. Yeah, just stick it in there. It's great. Which then leads to the next section of actually building the plan. Here's something I really want to touch on and I'm hoping can sink in too. As you go through this process, you're doing that high level creative work. You're at your emotions. You're trying to find ways to emotionally target your audience. And once you get there, you can start to copy paste. And there's more copy pasting coming later on. Here is, this is your session plan. You know now what your requirements are. You know what problem you're trying to solve. You know how you're going to guide your audience, how to solve that. You can start building the rest of your material, the rest of your collateral to support those objectives. Stick timing in so that you know that, we're starting at 1 o'clock and we're going to go through 15 minutes of facilitation stuff. Then we're going to go, and if this is like a tabletop or something, 2 hours of session time. And all your information is there. We're going to wind down the scenario, and then we're going to go through post-scenario review. For a lot of tabletop sessions I've hosted, I've found that there's good value in one-to-one. We spend an hour in tabletop time. We spend an hour in review time. Let the audience critique themselves. Bring your own questions to the table. Open-ended questions. So, AJ, how do you think you guys did? Right? So, Tim, what did you think about the knowledge of the instant response plan? Right? Open-ended questions. Let them critique themselves. That way you don't need to do it. But you know what you need to do the whole time? Take an awful lot of notes. I'll get into that in a second too. And then, really just closing it down. Having this information set up ahead of time will aid your facilitation dramatically. I think that's the end of that one. I'll go back into other things. When you are creating your collateral, when you are creating your inputs, when you are creating all your information, this one here. Jason showed you this too, MITRE Attack Navigator. And if you go through the courses on Attack IQ, it'll show you how to really use this. So say we went over and we found a group. Once you click on a group, it'll also kind of give you some more information underlying about the kind of things. Dynamite Panda. That's a cool name. I've never belonged to a club that sounds as cool as Dynamite Panda. It'll tell you the techniques. Jason led you through TTPs, tools, techniques, procedures. Or techniques, tactics, and procedures, sorry. The kinds of software they use. You can start to dial into this. It will show you, the IDs of the software, the IDs of the techniques. And you could say, that's T1083. If we decide that file and directory discovery, well, that actually sounds interesting. That sounds relevant for my organization. You can come back to the, MITRE Attack Navigator. We're going to just, simple, quick, easy, dirty. I love it. We're going to create a new layer for enterprise. And here's where we find out if my hotspot's still on. Right? So here you're interacting directly with the MITRE Attack Navigator. You're interacting directly with the MITRE Attack framework. And you can build your threat profile, your threat model down from left to right. We start with reconnaissance. We go to resource development, initial access. We can build things, especially for a technical team, that are realistic, that are relevant, that are timely, all those cool things that we want our audience to be engaged with so that they ask us to come back. And we can use things like that. I'm just going to turn on the little thing here just because it makes it a little easier to see. Does anybody remember what I did the search for? I can't even see that very well. So I'm kind of sideways here. Where's my search box? There it is. T1083. I don't know. And it'll highlight it for us. It's over here somewhere. Why isn't it highlighting? Anyway, if you go through the academy.attackiq stuff, it'll tell you how to use it better than I can. But it's a great tool that helps us also, cover our bases. Because if we get to, and I've done this many times too, we come up with what sounds like a brilliant threat, a brilliant attack surface. And then we get to things like defense evasion, and we discover that the organization that we're doing the tabletop test in actually has technology in place that we would not actually bypass Then we have to suspend realism in our listeners. We don't want that. We don't want any of that. That's garbage. Okay, so I'm going to go. So we have purpose, objectives, requirements, content, collateral, post-analysis. I hope that some of this is interesting and cool, that helps you understand the proper prior planning that can help you deliver a cool and exciting tabletop session. Because what you want to do is use this plan, and if you got a slide deck that goes along with it, great. If you got a Kahoot that goes along with it, great. Use your plan that you built as your guide, and that'll help you make sure that you're not losing anything behind. Because when you're doing your facilitation, you need to be 50% psychologist. You're watching the reactions. You are having to pivot. You are having to read the audience in a very visceral way to make sure that you are impacting them effectively. You got to be 50% game show host, right? You really are there in some extent to entertain. And 50% scribe. Okay, maybe I didn't do my math very well on that. Taking notes will be very important, again, when it comes down to copy-paste. What is Shark Boss, T-posing Shark Boss, going to demand of us? Whether we know it or not, they're going to want paperwork. They're going to want a report. Absolutely. And you know what I also did on my silly little website? Here's a tabletop session report. Very blank, very quick. If anybody wants the actual Word documents, just, I don't know, dox me on LinkedIn or something, and I'd be happy to pass them along. An executive summary, fill that out last. You know why? Because you're going to copy-paste that from the rest of the document. Well, what you're going to do here, section number 2. What did I do for preparation? Wait a minute, that's all in my plan. What did I do for facilitation? Wait a minute, most of that's in my plan. What did I do? What were my key findings and recommendations? Most of that, if you did your preparation right, is already in your plan. The rest is in your notes. Copy, paste. Make your life easy, especially the reporting piece, because report sucks, right? And then copy, paste everything back into an executive summary at the very beginning. Very quick, very, very clean, very dirty. I love it. The accountability trap, and this is my second to last slide, I promise, Thomas, so that we'll be on time. Look at us go. I've had a few organizations that have come to me and said, hey, Adam, I just bought this really cool tool. Okay, as a consultant, I have to put myself in the microscope for this one too. I look at some of the really cool tools out there like Immersive Labs, and it's very expensive, and it's got some great kind of scenario stuff built into it. Who is overall accountable for the success or failure of your crisis simulation, your tabletop session, whatever you're doing? Who's overall accountable? You are. If Shark Boss came to you and said, I need you to deliver a tabletop session, and it flops, and if you've even hired me and it flops, yes, you never hire me again. But what you also do is you damage your own reputation in your own organization. So don't fall into the trap that a lot of people do of just farming it out to someone else and expecting it to get done right. Understand your objectives, understand your demographic, your audience, the objectives you're trying to understand, your purpose. Okay? What do I have there? Oh, yeah. I want to give a plug to AJ. AJ, have a big wave. Everybody look at AJ, point and laugh. No, I'm kidding. AJ is a friend of mine who is building a company around doing some of this work. And the reason that I wanted to give him a plug is because he's doing it right. Is because he understands, and the same way that I do, we just have different models of how we go about doing this stuff, is understanding how to get your organization to feel good about its incident responses, to feel good and understand how to get better, because that's the whole goal. Cybersecurity needs to be a business enabler, and it would be lovely if we could do that inside crisis simulations instead of active incident response, where we've just got an entire database dumped on Pastebin. So I reach out to me and talk about the stuff. Reach out to AJ, talk about the stuff. We're both, very much incident response people and love doing this stuff. And so I put some silly videos on LinkedIn, and this is kind of the tagline that I've used on it. Cybersecurity shouldn't be scary. And we've had a couple of that conversations, and I know Robert was trying to hammer that home too. FUD doesn't work. FUD has never worked. So why don't we do something better than FUD? How about we do something fun? How about we have some fun and deliver some cool things together, take our businesses along for a journey, and be their guides. Cybersecurity is a business enabler. So that's what we did. We walked through receiving a request. We walked through determining a purpose, building a plan, facilitating a session, building a report.